We ended with our last mini lecture talking about the Earth's magnetic field. And we talked about how streams of particles from the sun, the solar wind, can kind of peel back parts of the Earth's magnetic field, which we call the magnetosphere. But a really beautiful thing happens when this happens too, as the sun is constantly spitting out charged particles from its surface, our solar wind that fills the whole solar system. But every so often, the sun has something that we call a solar storm. It kind of belches these tangled clouds of magnetic fields and charged particles throughout the solar system. And sometimes those clouds of magnetism and particles smack into our magnetosphere. And then those charged particles fall along. They follow along the Earth's magnetic field lines. They follow along, those charged particles fall along towards the Earth's magnetic north and south poles. And those charged particles interacting with our Earth's upper atmosphere are what causes the aurora, the northern and southern lights. So those charged particles interacting with the Earth's atmosphere releases photons of different colors, different energies, different colors of light, different wavelengths. And that is what gives us the beautiful aurora, or the northern and southern lights. Jupiter also has an aurora from charged particles coming from the sun, and also because of interaction between it and its nearby moons, causing particles to flow along Jupiter's magnetic field towards its poles, and also creating auroras. This is an actual picture of the aurora on Jupiter too. The Earth's atmosphere is composed of 78% nitrogen gas, that's N2, 21% oxygen gas, that's O2, and 0.93% of argon gas. The remaining portion of the Earth's atmosphere is mostly made up of carbon dioxide. So here we have a pie chart showing mostly nitrogen. And then the second element is oxygen. And down here is our Earth's atmosphere. It's fairly thin compared to the size of our Earth, but certainly enough to help us along. And here we've got the edge of the Earth's surface in black, and then this blue streak here, that's the Earth's atmosphere. We've got the sun back here, the sun shining through our Earth's atmosphere. This image was taken from the International Space Station as they're observing sunrise from space. So here are two graphs that show the different layers of our Earth's atmosphere. We live in the part of the Earth's atmosphere called the troposphere. The troposphere goes about 10 kilometers above the Earth's surface. That's where sort of all the mountains and a lot of the clouds reside, okay? Some of the fluffier clouds. And then we get up into the stratosphere, which is also where the ozone layer is. That's the layer that protects us from a lot of the sun's UV radiation. It absorbs some of that UV radiation. And then above that, we have the mesosphere, which is where a lot of the meteors are kind of burning up in. And then we have our thermosphere, the upper layer, okay, at about 90 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And there's a special place that we call the Kármán line, which is at 100 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And that's essentially where we say that space begins and our Earth's atmosphere ends. And so we have actually the International Space Station, which is up here above the Kármán line, so up in space, sitting at about 330 to 410 kilometers above our Earth's surface. And also the aurora does happen in sort of these regions here too. Now, the density and pressure of the Earth's atmosphere decreases with height above the Earth's surface. So here's a graph that shows the altitude. In this case, the altitude is our height above the Earth's surface. And then down here, we have a chart where zeros over here, increasing quantity here, okay? And so the green line is the pressure of the Earth's atmosphere, okay? And so the pressure is greatest at the surface. It decreases as we go higher in the Earth's atmosphere. The density is greatest at the Earth's surface. It decreases as we go up above the Earth's atmosphere. But here we have the temperature. And you see that the temperature doesn't necessarily constantly decrease as we go up to higher distances above the Earth's surface. So we see that actually, so the temperature decreases as we leave the Earth's surface until we reach the end of the troposphere, which is the layer of the atmosphere that we live in, okay? Then it starts to actually heat up a little bit. The temperature increases as we are going through the stratosphere, okay? And then we reach the mesosphere, which is where the meteors are mostly coming through and breaking apart. Temperature decreases again. And then we're coming up here toward the thermosphere, reaching near the Kármán line. And then the temperature shifts again. So the temperature of air is also causing the speed of sound to change. So sound also travels at a special speed, and that is related to the temperature of the air. And so that's why the speed of sound graph is here, and why it seems to mimic closely what's happening with the temperature change as we move higher and higher above the Earth's atmosphere. There's something called the greenhouse effect, which you have probably heard of. The greenhouse effect traps heat close to a planetary surface, just like a greenhouse for plants traps heat to help them grow in colder climates or during the wintertime. The greenhouse effect traps heat close to the surface of a planet, and it makes the planet warmer than it would be otherwise without this effect going on, okay? So carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. There's a couple other greenhouse gases, but carbon dioxide is the main one. A little bit of carbon dioxide in your atmosphere is good, especially where we are, our Earth, at our distance away from the sun. We're far enough away that if we didn't have the greenhouse effect in our atmosphere, it would be a little bit too cold. But we've got a little bit of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's helping us out a little bit, okay? Making us a little bit warmer than we would be otherwise. But way, way, way too much carbon dioxide is a really bad thing. And so right now, what we're experiencing on our planet is a rapid increase in the amount of carbon dioxide that's in our atmosphere. It's causing us to, it's causing the greenhouse effect to sort of run away from itself and to make us warmer, even warmer than we should be naturally, because of all this extra carbon dioxide that humans are pumping in to the atmosphere. Okay, so here's a little depiction of what's happening. The energy from the sun, solar radiation, coming in through our Earth's atmosphere. Some of this energy is absorbed by the Earth's surface and it warms up the surface. Some of that energy is converted into infrared wavelengths of light, okay? Infrared wavelengths. And so some of this infrared radiation is then absorbed by our atmosphere, by the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. And so this carbon dioxide kind of traps the infrared radiation in our atmosphere, and it warms up our planet more than it should otherwise be if there wasn't that carbon dioxide there. So the direct effect is the warming of the Earth's surface and the troposphere. That's the lowest layer of our atmosphere, okay? Some of this radiation does get to escape into space too, but it's this extra carbon dioxide in our atmosphere that's trapping the infrared radiation that is coming in from the sun, and it's warming our planet even more, okay? The more of this carbon dioxide you have in your atmosphere, the more you're gonna artificially heat up your planet. And Venus has an incredibly crazy, what we call runaway greenhouse effect. Venus has way more carbon dioxide in its atmosphere than the Earth does. And that makes Venus incredibly, incredibly warm. And it's the second planet away from the sun, but this incredible greenhouse effect that's going on Venus is really heating up the planet to way more than it should be. And a lot of scientists point toward Venus and its greenhouse effect as something that could be an eventuality here on the Earth if we don't think about the amount of carbon dioxide that we're pumping into the atmosphere. Okay, so this is a plot that shows the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere in a unit's, well, basically, if the unit is larger here, that means that there's more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And on the horizontal axis, we have the year. So this is our monthly average CO2 concentration. It does vary seasonally. So its largest sort of in spring, summer, and diminishes in fall. So that's what the zigzag pattern is. But you can see that over time, the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is going up. And so this trend is probably is actually related to the increased carbon dioxide emission that we humans are pumping into the atmosphere. So here we have the atmospheric carbon dioxide parts per million. That's like a fraction per million of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere on this axis, with the pink chart, pink graph. And then with the blue, we've got the carbon dioxide emissions created by humans and industry. And so we can see that there's been increased CO2 emissions since the Industrial Revolution, which was around 1760. And this increased CO2 emission that caused by human industry is thought to be responsible for this modern increase in the carbon dioxide in our Earth's atmosphere, which is heating up our planet. So here we see in blue again is the CO2 carbon dioxide emission coming from industry here in blue. And here's the trend of our atmospheric carbon dioxide content. And you can see that they're both going up together, they're correlated. So it's us humans that are contributing to this, what we would call global warming or climate change, this change in the Earth's climate, heating it up in a different way than what happens naturally on Earth alone. And this final piece I'll talk about, which transitions us into our next mini lecture, is about the tides on Earth and talking about the ocean tides. Ocean tides are high whenever you're at the beach and the waves and the sea level rises at the beach. And whenever you see the sea level recede, you have low tide, okay? So it's the gravitational force that the moon exerts on the Earth, which is causing these ocean tides. And so the gravitational force on the side of the Earth that's closest to the moon here, the moon is going to pull essentially the ocean water closer toward it, which is what causes high tide. And then on the opposite side of the Earth, you also have a similar effect. You have high tide, and then in between, you have the low tides. So the sun also causes smaller tides, which we call neap and spring tides, but these are about half as strong as the tides that the moon exerts on us. And because our moon is so large, it's exerting a large tidal force on us, which is giving us these larger changes in sea level over the course of a period of time, over the course of a day, okay, as the Earth rotates. So the tidal force is a result of the moon's pull in specific location. It's a net force. So we have the moon's pull in a specific location minus the moon's average pull over the whole Earth gives us the tides. So here we have the Earth and we've got our moon. And so the side of the Earth that's facing the moon is going to be experiencing the greatest gravitational force. Exactly on the opposite side of the Earth, the gravitational force is a little bit less, okay? And then on the edges here and here, it has about the same gravitational force, okay? But, okay, so that's the gravitational force that it's exerting on all places individually. But then you also have to take into account the average gravitational force that the moon is exerting on the Earth too, and subtract them. The moon's pull in a specific location minus the moon's average pull. So when you think about that minus the average pull, what you end up with is having a large pull on this side and then another large pull on this side from the moon, which is effectively sort of pulling out the liquid water that makes up our ocean. Okay, it's pulling them out and it's increasing the sea levels, and that's leading to the tides that we see every day, the high and low tides that we see every day near the ocean.